Okay, today we are basically talking about the adjustments of the steering and sail control of the Bat model. In front of me we have a Bat2, which doesn't matter because Bat1 and Bat2 on the controls are identical. Here we are. I already installed the receiver and the servos are connected to the receiver. The hull has the on-off switch connected. So we connected one wire, which is the heavy connector here, to the battery pack. Then the other wire naturally goes to the receiver. I do recommend a very simple controller, which is from Hobby King, similar controllers, but it's a simple 2-channel pistol grip transmitter, which does a very good job for land yachts. Okay, now just show you about the functions right now, and then we turn on the switch here, and here we are. That's the sail control with the main sheet attached, and the steering goes back and forth here. This is the servo for the steering. I usually put it on the second spot here, because if you put it on further up most hole here, then the steering is very touchy, and it may be, once you get used to the model, it may be better to put it up because it's more sensitive this way. Well, the hull is back on. This was the bottom we were looking at it. Now we have put the top of the hull back on it. Basically we're looking at turning on the radio first, and then we turn on the receiver. Trigger operates the main sheet. As you can see, steering wheel operates the steering. This is plenty of steering, even so it's not in the maximum position. Okay, we have the Bat2 sail, but it doesn't matter whether it's a Bat1 or Bat2, except the mast step for the Bat1 would be here, and the mast step for the Bat2 is here. So we put the mast step in here and attach the forestay, put the main sheet through the hole here, and then guide the main sheet through the back slot of the boom. Now, in order to adjust that, we're going to pull the trigger, and then we mark that spot, and then we take that out and attach a nut here so it doesn't slide out through the slot afterwards. As you can see, the boom is pretty much parallel to the hull, which is important, and it's as close as possible to the hull without actually touching the hull. So as we sheet out, this is pretty much all we need sheeting out, which is the center position of the radio. If you want to sheet out more, let's say you really want to park the model or whatever, and you pull the trigger forward, and it naturally gives you a little more here. And we want to adjust it to when we pull the trigger all the way, that this is as tight as it can be. And as if you hear the buzzing of the servo, that means the servo is actually under stress. So we may, on the radio, we may back up a little bit to to get rid of the buzzing. Most of the time, when you run that model land sailor, boom is pulled as tight as possible. So then you look at, basically we look at the front already. If that is not completely straight, there's naturally adjustment. You adjust with the clevises, you adjust it as close as possible to it being straight, and if there's a slight variation, you can always adjust that trim of your radio. Now I want to point out the difference in between a Bat1 and a Bat2, and I also want to mention that the Bat2 is not an upgrade of a Bat1, it's a different class. The Bat1 is a class 1 boat, and the Bat2 is a class 2 boat. Okay, here we go. The hulls basically are identical up to this point up front, and then the Bat2 adds a springer to it, which is an extension of the front end. It's called a springer because it actually has a suspension action here. The Bat is the class 2 boat, which means the dimensions are greater. Naturally, the rear axle is also wider. Here we have the Bat1 rear axle, and here is the Bat2 rear axle, but the mounting and the wheel size is entirely identical. Also, the mounting of the wheels on the side with the screws, everything is identical. Well, we're looking at a Bat2 sail right now, and obviously the sail size and the mast length is bigger because it's a Class 2 boat. And as you can see, this is the top of it, and this is the bottom of it. The boom length is identical to the Bat1, and here we are in compare. I'm gonna overlap the Bat1 sail on the Bat2 sail, and then you can see first the angle is not the same, but you see the difference in the length of the sail. The Bat1 stops right there, matching up the bottom. This is the difference up here in between the Bat1 and the Bat2 sail. It's quite a bit longer. It's almost a foot longer. Okay, basically what I want to do here is point out a few differences in between the Bat1 and the Bat2. As I mentioned before, the Bat2 has a springer, which is part of it is a suspension part, and the other part is naturally, since the Bat2 is a longer hull base. So I want to show you what it looks like, how it's attached. This will be the plate right here for the Bat1 where the axle is attached to. Bat2, we add this aluminum bar to it, and it attaches the same way as the Bat1. Since this rod is fairly flexible here, I install a steel rod inside the push rod of the steering control to keep it from buckling. As you can see, it's very flexible here, but it's very stiff here, because this steel rod is actually installed inside the forward part of the push rod here. Pretty much that settles it.